Come on stage.
You notice that he skipped my last name. For anybody who doesn't know my last name, it's Clutterbuck. I'm fully doxxed, but I see why he skipped it. Do you know how to press that button? Yeah. Cool. Cool. Where's the clicker? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
As stated, my name is Donny Clutterbuck. I'm here to talk about Bitcoin stuff. I labeled it Bitcoin stuff because I wanted it to be intentionally vague. I think we get caught up in the tech details a little bit too heavily sometimes, and anybody who is from the Ethereum, Solana, Tezos, whatever other ecosystem, you hear the word UTXO or inscription or ordinal, and you don't hear NFT, and you're like, what the fuck are we even talking about? And then you don't even explore the ecosystem. And that kind of happened to me with Ethereum back in the day. I worked in restaurants for 25 years. And I was a dive bar and club bartender for a decade. Then I worked for a food scientist in Manhattan for a decade, well, for a few years. Then I ran a French restaurant for a long time after that. And all throughout, I was speaking publicly about like food science. So this kind of stuff is not abnormally new to me, but I haven't been working in this ecosystem, the Web3, as we don't call it anymore, ecosystem, for more than like 5 years. And I was working for like a DeFi protocol and a DID protocol, or a DID layer 1 blockchain, with a tech stack that was incredible, but they had bad marketing, so we don't talk about it anymore. And then I got into Solana NFTs, and I totally skipped Ethereum. And once I was involved in the Solana ecosystem, I looked at Ethereum, and I was like, there's like RPC, like I have to set up new networks. The wallet looks like a developer interface. It doesn't look like a user interface to me, so like Phantom Wallet felt good. I knew Solana NFTs, and I thought I knew how to not lose all my money in them. I still figured that out, of course. But I was put off from the Ethereum ecosystem because nobody had ever like spelled it out for me, and I felt like I was late. I felt like I was going to be the bait, not the shark. I feel like a lot of people who are in the other ecosystems we were just talking about, the other layer 1 blockchains such as Ethereum and Solana, are thrown off from Bitcoin because it just looks weird. There's 2 wallets in your wallet. Like, why are there 2 wallets? Why don't we call it an NFT? Right? Like, does anybody, feel free to interrupt me. Like, I want to be interrupted during this because I'd like for it to be a conversation. It's only 20 minutes, but like I can either say stuff and lose you at some point, or you can raise your hand and say whatever you want to say. So like, please interrupt me. I want to be interrupted. We're here to talk about Bitcoin stuff. Why do we like NFTs? The narrative initially around this was like immutability, permanence. I own it, I like it, I have it, you can't take it from me. The narrative ended up being like a little bit less than true because some of those things are stored in places where maybe the token is traced on the ledger, like the whereabouts of your whatever NFT you have is tracked on the Ethereum blockchain, but where is the image? Where's the data that's associated with that? So like, yeah, you own it, and you can prove you own that token almost no matter what. As long as Ethereum exists, you have that token. But the image behind it can just fall away over the course of time. Pokemon cards can burn in a fire. Pogs are an unlimited supply. It doesn't mean they don't have value, of course. Like, this doesn't mean that the Ethereum blockchain is not valuable, but it means that Bitcoin solves a very unique problem, where all of that data is stored directly on-chain along with the whereabouts of the token, as it were, even though we don't have NFTs. So we like these things because they solve problems for us, and I think each blockchain solves its own problem, but Bitcoin does solve a distinct problem for NFTs or digital assets, if you're going to call them that. So problems with the narrative, again, I guess I just said this, so I'll just say it again. We know where the thing is all the time, but we don't know where what it's representing is all the time. And it could be on an IPFS server that needs a monthly bill paid. If you stop paying the bill, the picture that you have or the ownership of something, that thing doesn't exist anymore. You can't see it. You can't track it. You know that you own it, but what do you own, right? That can be a problem. So with Bitcoin NFTs or ordinals or inscriptions or whatever we want to call them, these images, this is the original Fomojis collection. Full disclosure, I work for Fomojis. I'm just using this as an example because we have 2 different collections and they represent 2 different things I'm going to talk about, and there's not a lot of other ways for me to say that properly. So these images, these Fomojis, are fully on-chain. That JPEG or PNG or whatever the file format is, each one of those things is inscribed directly onto the Bitcoin blockchain. It is an inscription of data associated with an ordinal so that we can trace it, and it's attached to a UTXO so that we can move it around from wallet to wallet. And this is where everybody gets lost. And they go, what in the fuck are you talking about? So an inscription is the data itself. When you make a Bitcoin transaction, there is witness data. There's a pocket for you to put stuff, text, code into. You throw stuff in there like a JPEG, now that JPEG is in the witness data of the transaction. When the transaction goes into the block, now that's there. And it's referenceable forever. On every full node across the world, whatever, 20, 30, 40,000 of them that there are, it is a very duplicated network. And when we talk about the word inscription, that JPEG is the inscription. The UTXO, well, hang on. What's an ordinal? Because you hear these two words, right? Some people call them inscriptions, some people call them ordinals. What exactly is that? An ordinal is a numbered sat. So ordinal theory is basically just like, imagine you have a dollar bill and there's 100 cents in it. Which one's first? Which one is the first cent? Which one is the last cent? Bitcoin doesn't know what the first and last sat are, so we have to decide for it what those are. And that's protocol level shit. That's not like Bitcoin knows what we're talking about when we say this is like the 7 million sat. It's like, there's no such thing. Like, they don't really like technically exist. But in the ordinals protocol, they do. And as long as the protocol exists, we can reference those things, we can find them, trace them, and push them around, I guess. And in order to be able to do this, since we don't have smart contracts on Bitcoin, we have to be able to label some of the things that are within the Bitcoin ecosystem. Otherwise, we have nowhere to put things or nowhere to find them when we want to look for them, let's say. It's like the Dewey Decimal System in a library for anybody who's over 35. So, final term, what is a UTXO? A UTXO is an unspent transaction output, which in the case of a UTXO-driven system, each transaction is its own coherent, self-contained thing, where this is what it's coming from and this is what it's becoming. So an unspent transaction output is like when the end of a transaction happens and you have a thing, that thing goes and sits in a wallet. That's now an unspent transaction output. It's the thing that came from the transaction and it hasn't yet been turned into a new thing yet. So UTXO, you could say if you have $1 in your wallet and one of those 10-cent pieces of the dollar is a dime, that's what a UTXO is in Bitcoin. It's like a little chunk of Satoshis because Bitcoin doesn't think in individual sats. There's too many of them, there's too many ways to attack the network. It needs to it's a UTXO model, so there's a lot of reasons this happens, but you can't send a sat to someone. You can put a sat in a UTXO and send the UTXO off, just like you can spend change or you can spend dollar bills. But you can't take a cent out of a dollar bill, like just a single cent, and theoretically send it somewhere. It just doesn't make sense. So there's a back button, right? These things are inscriptions associated with an ordinal held by a UTXO. Inscription is the data, the ordinal is the numbered sat that we've decided has a location and we can figure out what it is, and the UTXO is the pocket of sats or the group of sats that were thrown around like a basketball. Something that's unique about the Bitcoin network is that it's super strong. There's 13 years of proof of work history. In order to make a network stronger than that, you'd have to go back the day before Bitcoin was started and start something, which is theoretically impossible. Well, maybe not theoretically impossible. We don't know how to do that. So at the moment, this is the strongest network that we have because it's the most difficult to unravel because the most energy and time have gone into it. It's not what I'm here to say, but I think it's an important thing to say when we're talking about why Bitcoin is so expensive to inscribe on. There's only 4 megabytes per block. 4 megabytes sounds like a big number, but it's not a lot when it comes to data. It's like a 4/100ths of one of those goofy, remember those what are they called, mega discs, back in the late 90s? It had 100 megabytes on it, and now what is that? That's 5 iPhone pictures. It's not a lot of data. So getting anything on chain, because if you want to put 4 megabytes on chain, you have to pay for that block. You have to displace all the other transactions in that block or forego those fees. It gets very expensive very quickly. So if you have a Bored Ape or a Femoji, this is a Genesis Femoji, one of the first ones, fully on-chain image, the JPEG itself is what is put in the inscription data, whatever, witness data, or a Bored Ape. Those are both about 130 kilobytes. And to inscribe them at 30 sats per vbyte, and think of 30 sats per vbyte as dollars per pound when you're mailing a package. Sats are a denomination of Bitcoin, and vbyte is a denomination of kind of weight or size, file size, let's say. So these are both 130 kilobyte files. It would cost about $120 at 30 sats per vbyte just to put that on chain. The cool thing about that is you do it once and it's there forever. The bad thing about that is you got to come up with $120, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but what if it's a 10K PFP collection? We bump into a problem pretty quickly there. The current fee rate is 6 or 7 or 8 sats per vbyte. This is in a very down lull at the moment. This is now considered a very big discount. Sats per vbyte have gone up to 500, 600, in some cases 2,000 sats per vbyte. So imagine how quickly that number changes and then how quickly we discover or are forced to consider what we actually give a shit about storing. So large collections can be pricey. I keep on jumping ahead of myself here, but pardon me. It would cost you about $120,000 at 30 sats per vbyte to get the whole Bored Ape Yacht Club collection onto Bitcoin. And that's not right now. It would probably cost about 40 grand right now or something like that, which is still like a huge amount of money. Let's say you want to put 10,000 pictures on shit. You're going to pick Ethereum, where it's like free, or Solana, where it's actually free, or are you going to spend 40 grand to get it on Bitcoin, right? Kind of depends on your priorities, but this doesn't sound like a great idea off the bat until you think about what recursion is. And recursion is essentially, instead of sandboxing to that single witness data and throwing a JPEG in there, you might take all of the hats. Like, let's say there's 200 hats of the same hat in the collection. It's a 10K PFP. 200 of the monkeys have the same hat on. You put the hat on chain. In the witness data, you inscribe the hat, and then throughout the collection, that's just HTML file, you reference that hat. Same for jackets, same for pants, same for smiles, skin tones, all that stuff. You separate all the traits, inscribe them individually at a much lower cost because you only have to put the hat on once, not 600 times. Put the shirt on once, not 700 times, right? So how do we implicate, or how do we practice this, let's say? It's still on chain, fully. Although the code is HTML that is in each inscription, like these things don't look like that on chain. They look like code. But we read code, as, if Brian's still in here, as he was saying, anything you can do on the internet, you can do in a Bitcoin inscription. So since it's HTML code, it's referencing something that is also on chain. The HTML is on chain, so are the things it's referencing. Thereby, it's still fully on chain, effectively. You could argue that you don't own the hat because the hat is someone else's, and then your thing is just referencing the hat. But I would say that if there are 400 Bored Apes wearing the same hat anyway, who owns the hat? I don't know. It's not you. It's still 400 of you, right? So it's an inscription associated with an ordinal held by a UTXO, all quite the same, except that the traits are inscribed separately, and the main inscription's HTML code all reference that. What this leads to is actually pretty cool. A 605 kilobyte image when downloaded from or.io, this is how it displays. It's not like you have to look at HTML and you have to like find a decoder ring and figure out what it's supposed to look like. That's just what it shows up like everywhere. So if you look at it, so what is that? 1024 by 1024 is what it comes out to because it shows you in the same resolution that the traits were originally inscribed in. Pixel art's really cool for this too because it scales infinitely if you do it the right way. So like you can get super tiny file sizes and then scale it up to like a building-sized image. But this being not pixel art, 1024 by 1024 at 606 kilobytes on disk, but on chain, it's 162 bytes. I don't know if that's elating to everybody else, but like that makes me feel, as a person who would rather live in a studio apartment full of 15 things I love than a 10-bedroom house full of shit that I just put into bedrooms because I didn't feel like getting rid of it. That lifestyle makes me really uncomfortable. The idea of having only the things I care the most about and as few of them as possible to be happy, that makes me super excited. 605 kilobyte image with 162 bytes on chain. I just wanted to say that one more time. This is just kind of saying the same stuff I just said. I wanted to point that out. Here's an example of putting the traits on chain. This is a poor quality screenshot. I did that. They're not inscribed at poor quality. They're inscribed at 1024 by 1024, just like everything else that we just saw. But this is what it looks like when you put them all together, or you see them all, rather. This is just viewing a wallet that's full of traits. In fact, this opens up a new avenue where you can also sell off the traits. You know how you can buy a Spider-Man comic, but you can also buy the original films that have the Spider-Man original drawings on them. You know, those are worthwhile to collectors or something. These are now, I don't know what we're going to do with these. We just have a folder full of them. But in 40 years, when Bitcoin's still running and I'm dying and someone starts to care about this because everyone who ran it was dead, you can sell the crown, or someone can. Someone's kids can sell the crown. Someone's kids can hang the crown in their bedroom and be like, I have the original Fimoji's crown. You know, nobody cares at the time, but someone might care later. I don't know. It's cool. So this is the shameless plug right now. This is the software that we built to do this. We are not a software, well, I guess we are a software company, but this is we just want to provide a service. We don't charge big fees for this. It's actually very small. It's almost not even worth doing from a fee standpoint. But what you can do is just drag the traits that you have. If you're an artist who's making a PFP collection, you have all the traits separate already, clearly. Drag them all in here. The software will inscribe it all for you and ask you if you want us to inscribe the HTML code collection, at which point you would have the collection, or if you just want the files themselves not inscribed, and you can take them over to I'm blanking on Inscribe Now or something like that, some self-launch service where people can find those files and inscribe them themselves. It's another game we like to play on Bitcoin because sometimes the people who are the creators of the project don't want to foot the bill for the fees or can't. So they just allow the community to decide whether or not the thing mints out, and then everybody can like inscribe it themselves and pay the 10 to 15 bucks to get it on chain. Anywho, we do this. It's generate.ord, get it, .io. Go there if you want to poke around. There's a pricing calculator. It's fun to see if it's worthwhile for you to use, which it almost certainly is if you're doing a PFP collection of even as many as like 300 pieces. It's still more than worthwhile to do so. But I didn't really come here to say, use the software. I came here to demystify some of the misunderstandings about the Bitcoin ecosystem. Before I move to the next thing, Joseph wanted me to inscribe, to show you how easy it is to inscribe. I'm going to move over to my laptop now after you see whatever socials you need, which it's Donny OK pretty much everywhere. And if Discord, don't like send me a DM on Discord. It's just going to look like a scammer, so I'm probably not going to answer it. But you can follow me on X at It's Donny OK. I'd never post anything unless I think it's like supremely interesting or it's like a tech thread or something like that. I'm never going to be like, who's active right now? You're never going to have to answer that question with me. I'm not going to do that. So does anybody have questions about Bitcoin before I move on to a brief summary of some of these other things like inscribing? Cool. Again, interrupt me if you feel like you should. What is the Bitcoin price going to be not top of this cycle, but the highest point Q4 this year? Shout it out. Highest Bitcoin price we see Q4 this year. 103, 100? That's what we have? I actually tend to agree. Cool, we're going to take the dead middle of that. This is at the gamma.io. I know that they're like sponsoring part of this, but I'm not even using this because of that. This is just the longest standing, easiest interface to inscribe anything. So you can make a new collection, you can make you can make a one-of-one piece into prints, you can inscribe a one-of-one piece and do all that stuff. Or when you go to individual inscriptions, you can inscribe text. Also, fun fact about Bitcoin, when you sign something, you're not signing something ongoing, you're signing a single thing. It's permission to do one thing. You don't have to like disconnect because you can't connect because there's no smart contracts. Kind of a fun ability that we have by not having an ability to do something, you know? Text. I'm Donny, and we're at Brussels NFT Fest. Bitcoin will be, let's say 105K. Any strong disagreement? Or more in Q4 2024. Now I can't take that back because it's going to be written. I mean, no one's going to care. No one's going to like go find this anywhere and be like, look what he said. I'm going to inscribe it to my own wallet because I don't have any of your wallet addresses if you even have wallet addresses with Bitcoin. I'm Donny, and we're at Brussels NFT Fest. Bitcoin will be 105K or more in Q4. Automatic selection. Do we want to make a UTXO with a special SAT? Do we have a SAT from like June 6, no, we can't do that, 2009? You can't have a SAT from before when Bitcoin was born. I always forget that part. Was your daughter born in 2012 and you want the day that that SAT was released into the wild to be the SAT that this is inscribed on because you care about it for some reason? It's not the case right now. We're just going to go with automatic selection. It'll pick some SATs to make a UTXO out of. On-chain metadata, I don't think we need. Can make a custom fee out of it because currently the mempool sits at 7 sats per vbyte, so we are going to overshoot it because it's basically a free inscription of tiny text. It's going to go to that ordinal address. It's always a BC1P for the most part, which we can get into wallet types. No, we can't. There's 55 seconds left. Agree to terms without reading them, always, I say. I don't even know why they make you scroll because no one's ever read anything. Cool. See how easy it is to describe data onto Bitcoin? Yeah, so Gamma will, there's a Gamma booth actually out there, and they'll answer any questions you have about the user interface. But if this were to not say something went wrong, I don't know why it's doing that right now, it would just pop up and say, are you cool with this? And I'd say sign transaction, yes. And then that thing would be inscribed. I'm going to do it once we get off stage, and I'll prove this next year at NFT Fest 2025. I'll bring this back up. One final thing we have 15 seconds left. I can't do one final thing. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. Find me out there if you have any questions you didn't feel comfortable saying out loud. I love you, and I hope you have the best day of your entire lives.